So I think we should crack on, Vanessa, and get on
Great.
with the show. So what's the running order for now? So we should introduce ourselves first, shouldn't we? So my name's John. I'm the Chief Customer Officer at System One. I've been here almost 7 years, and we've been doing Super Bowl webinars for 7 years. So this is like my highlight of my year, where I get to talk about advertising with all you wonderful folks. And joining me today is the ever wonderful Vanessa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vanessa Chin, SVP of Marketing, and I think I'm on my 25th year in advertising, but second year hosting the Big Game webinar. All right, John, what do you have for us today?
Right. Well, I'm going to be introducing our methodology, which is really important because there are lots of people that measure Super Bowl ads, and there's always a big frenzy around now to go, who won, and there's different rankings and so on. So I thought I would explain how we got the data because that's quite important. And I'm going to summarize some of the big themes before you're going to take us into actually who won and why. So that's what's coming up now. So I will jump in to begin with, and let's talk to you about how we do what we do. Well, the first thing to say, as I mentioned in the introduction, is we've been testing Super Bowl ads for the last 7 years. We've been testing every single ad that airs. So if it airs in the game, we test it. And big shout out to our research team who turned that around in just 1 hour. So from the ad being on air to the results on our database, 1 hour. Now, just for any customers listening, we don't normally offer it that quick, all right? So I'm just putting that out there before I get kicked under the table. Go, we can't do that all the time. Anyway, but we do it just for you because it's Super Bowl and we want to get the results out there really quickly. We've tested 686 ads in total. We also test the teasers that come out before the big game as well. And that means we've actually spoken to over 100,000 consumers over the last 7 years. So this is a big database that we have. And we can also benchmark these ads versus everything on our database as well. All right. Why are we testing emotion? Well, basically, we divide at a headline level, we divide our measures into three. Star, meaning long-term brand building potential. Advertising is there to change behavior in the long term, and star rating is a predictor of success. Secondly, spike rating. As everyone knows, you need to deliver in the short term as well as the long term, and therefore spike rating predicts short-term success. And importantly, fluency, who can remember your brand? Now, we're going to come onto this later because actually fluency is particularly important in Super Bowl because there are so many advertisers all competing for your attention. Are you the one that stands out? And those three measures together are what we bring together for Super Bowl. All right, how do we do it? I know you're trying to wonder, how on earth is this magic done? Well, I have to say, big kudos and credit to my colleague, the Grand Fromage himself, Mr. Orlando Wood. He invented this analysis. And what he did, he looked at successful advertising over a long period of time and he worked out what drove market share for the brands that advertised. And he worked out that certain emotion is positively correlated and certain emotion is negatively correlated. So what he found out is that driving happiness and surprise positively correlate to long-term success. Driving negative emotions like anger, disgust, contempt drive an inverse correlation. So basically, if you can surprise people and make them feel happy, you're more likely to be remembered and more likely to drive market share within your category. What he then did was very important. He then looked at the media spend against those brands in each category. And when adjusted for media spend, he was able to see the likelihood that those brands had of driving market share. So, on a scale of 1 to 5 star, keeping it super simple, 1 star meaning no impact whatsoever. And it might surprise you to learn that almost half of all ads are 1 star. So when you see anything like 3 or 4 or 5 star, you're already in rare territory. All the way up to 5 star, which is an exceptional result. Now, 5 star are around 1% of our database. They are the examples where that brand delivered more than a 3% market share gain in the category. So they really are the exception. So anything you see with a 5 star is not like your Uber rating, by the way. It's much rarer than that. So 5 star really is exceptional. And that's what we're looking at Super Bowl. How many advertisers could get into that territory? All right, so we go on to the next slide. A nice bit of animation here. So does it work? Does emotion predict performance? Now, anyone who's read Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow by Daniel Kahneman will know that how we feel predicts our behavior. And it's exactly the same with advertising. How we feel about advertising predicts whether or not we're likely to go on and buy. Now, here's a interesting stat for you. If you were to take career earnings of a quarterback and correlate it to how many career yards they made, the correlation between emotion and advertising is better than the correlation between how well paid a quarterback is and how many yards they make in their career. Now, we know how much money goes into football and predicting results. So that's why we've decided to invest in making sure we can predict how advertising works in the real world. So there you go. That's the proof of the pudding, as they say. Now, let's get into the big picture. So, what does the data tell us about this year's advertisers in the Super Bowl? Now, firstly, what we found is overall, and slightly bad news here, versus last year, the average was 3 star. This year, it dropped slightly to 2.7. However, within that, there's an interesting dynamic because what we found is more 5 star. In fact, the most number of 5 stars we've seen in the last 7 years. 5 advertisers hit the absolute top score of 5 star. On the other end, what we see is a lot of 1 and 2 star. So what we found this year is there's a real polarization between brands that are really good and getting better at delivering on the big game, and lots of new advertisers, particularly AI, delivering less good advertising and filling out the 1 and 2 star at the bottom. All right, so how does that compare over the last number of years? We can see the trend here. So the average star rating in the US today is 2.4, and the average for Super Bowl was only 2.7. So you can see quite how narrow the gap is between advertising on average and the Super Bowl. Now, bear in mind, the average spot was $8 million. That is a lot of money to pay on creative that was actually delivering almost average. So you can see that money doesn't necessarily guarantee success when it comes to the creative. Now, what's driving this? Well, as I alluded to earlier, what we've noticed this year is almost 1 in 5 ads was either featuring AI or about AI. And what we noticed is the average of that set was only 2.1 star. Now, historically, we've seen B2B and financial services and healthcare typically at the bottom of the table. You can see here 2 examples here of 2 star and 1.8 star. These are categories that tend to lean into product over brand, messaging rather than emotion. And that's why what we're seeing overall is because there's a greater quantity of those ads, they're pulling the average score down. What's also interesting, and this theme, by the way, we have seen consistently every single year that I've been doing this, we've seen this time and time again. Returning advertisers always outperform rookie advertisers. Now, it touches on a fundamental belief of ours at System One, which you can see in the creative compound work that Andrew Tyndall did, that great creative compounds. The more consistent you are over years, the greater the difference between your performance and that of your competitors. But the problem is, of course, we as marketers get bored of our work quicker than anybody else does. And the Super Bowl is almost a mass display of that, where the temptation is to change it every year. But those advertisers that consistently use their Fluent devices, consistently do work that is familiar to the ones they've done before, consistently use the same creative agencies, all those things build up and have a compounding effect. So what we see is those advertisers coming back, doing work again, outperform significantly the ones that are trying Super Bowl for the first time. Now, I mentioned earlier, it's not just about long-term performance. We all need to keep our jobs, and to keep our jobs, we need to make sure that we sell in the short term as well. So, who won the Battle of Spike? Now, Spike rating is our measure of short-term potential. It's a combination of how strongly people feel and how easy the brand is to recognize. If you can't recognize the brand, there's no point advertising. So we're looking at those two things together. This is the top 10 if we were to sort by spike. So number one of my personal favorites, always makes me laugh, and I love the branding here, Dunkin' Donuts, or the Dunkings, I should say, got the best spike of the evening, which is very impressive. Then we have some very consistent advertisers in Bud Light and Lay's and Michelob Ultra. They consistently advertise every year. They consistently deliver the same idea, the same quality of execution, the same branding, the same Fluent devices every single year, and they tend to get slightly better. As we say at System One, familiarity breeds contentment. And it's a real kind of behavioral science insight that the more familiar we are with things, the better they make us feel. And that's super important. Some new advertisers or less familiar advertisers, Universal did a very good job. Pepsi seemed to win the battle of LinkedIn last week in terms of everyone's talking about Pepsi versus Coke. A great example here of actually them deciding to take on Coke with their taste challenge, and everyone remembered them, which is good. So well done them. Ring doorbells as well, showing that putting a dog in your ad always works. So great job by them. Red Bull, very distinctive, as Red Bull always are. And Pringles and T-Mobile, another example of consistent advertisers who get their message across and are remembered. So they were the top 10 when it came to Spike. Now, really important point here. You spend $8 million advertising, and 22% of the audience don't even remember who you are. This is one thing every advertiser needs to get much better at. Make sure they know who you are. So here, what we're seeing is over the last 7 years, fluency, in other words, the percentage of the audience that recognized who was advertising, is at an all-time low at just 78%. That actually is below the average in the US, which is, there's no excuse for that. So you're spending all that money on the creative, just need to make sure they know who you are, because otherwise 1 in 5 people cannot remember what they just saw. In fact, on the next slide, we combine both the creative power itself and fluency together. And what you can see here, and this is from Andrew's recent book, The Creative Dividend, what you'll see here is the index is now down to 1. In other words, if you take the emotional power of the ad with its distinctiveness, in other words, fluency is how easy is it to remember, the combination of those two things together is the same as the average of all advertising in the US. So again, it shows that there's a huge opportunity in Super Bowl to make that money go further. Now, how can you do that? Well, again, another bit of advice in the book is use your fluent devices, use your brand codes, as Mark Ritson would say. And it's not about using the same thing over and over again, but finding different ways of making your brand recognizable. It could be a character, could be a jingle, could be a logo, could be a strapline, there could be a color. There are many, many ways of making sure your brand is familiar. And again, using between 5 and 7 different occasions for that branding is super important. You can see here that's going to get you up to 87 or 88% of the audience recognizing. So again, these are simple things that often get forgotten when people make a Super Bowl ad. So
Um,
the big moment has arrived. What we want to know, Vanessa, is who who did the best work when it comes to star rating? And I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, John, I gave you the hard job of giving the mixed bag of results, but I get to just celebrate the top 10 in our ranking, which is great. So, what I'll do is I'll go through the top 10 and also highlight some of the key learnings and how essentially I think there's about 1,000 of you guys who signed up for today, what you can learn and bring to your day-to-day marketing and advertising life. All right, so starting at our 10th slot. So it is Hellman's and VML with Meal Diamond. So Hellman's leveraged humor, a consistent strategy for the brand. So humor is one of the most effective types of happiness for long-standing business effects. You just need to be brave enough to use it. So Hellman's used puns, exaggeration, and creator cameos in the spot, and comically changed the lyrics of Sweet Caroline to Sweet Sandwich Time, reimagining the classic tune with a uniquely Hellman's twist. So congrats to the Hellman's team. All right, number 9, a Super Bowl darling. So Lay's and High Dive. The Lay's challenge though, which was a curveball. So part 2 of the Lay's Super Bowl spot this year reinforced our consistent messaging about farm produce. Produce potatoes and interactive competition to bring the concept to life. It was undeniably Lay's and a great follow-up to their emotional 30s and asked their audience to participate. I know for myself, I wanted a trip to the farm, but that's just me. So that was number 9. Number 8 is Red Bull. That aired, if you guys saw it at the end of the game with Kastner. And this one's called Dog Date. Aw. So this is what we like to call fluid consistency. So Red Bull is a fantastic example of having a distinctive look and feel. Half of the ingredients required to support a creative dividend, which is the creative advantage an ad has versus So this is a lovable tale of two dogs in love, and it drove positive emotions, giving it quality and memorability. Okay, that's number 8. Going into number 7 is the very talked about Pepsi. So this was done by PepsiCo's content studio and BBDO, and it's called The Choice. So at number 7, it's really an interesting one. There's been a lot of buzz online about them borrowing assets from Coke and whether or not this is a distinctive enough ad for Pepsi. And the short answer is it absolutely is. Oh, sorry, the slide went. The Taste Challenge is famously Pepsi, paired with regular product shots and brand codes throughout. And by the end, most audiences can only remember Pepsi. Lighthearted humor and cultural cues add emotional magic, and that lands this ad in our top 10. Okay, now I'm going to switch the slide. Okay, so as we get closer to the top podium, you're going to notice that you're going to see fewer and fewer celebrities. And that's really a telling sign of what US audiences are craving at this moment. A little humanity, connection, and authenticity. So without further ado, number 6 on our list is Ring. This was done in-house at Miniac and Vimo. Search party for Ring. So this is a simple narrative, which places the product as a hero and community as a catalyst. It's a great example of how simplicity can be complexity, no buzz, no hype, no cinematic story, just a brilliant product and a practical use case. It hooks us in with a tense, sad moment before highlighting how the product is helping, how communities are working together and making a difference. So congrats to Ring. All right, number 5, another Super Bowl favorite, Michelob Ultra. This is Wyden and Kennedy, New York, the Ultra Instructor, and just in time, obviously, for Olympics. So I think we will get to enjoy this spot a lot more. So at number 5 is Michelob, an Olympic-themed Super Bowl ad that leads into exactly what they're known for: no compromise. The beer is for athletes. Kurt Russell features, and his appearance is subtle, mysterious even. The true magic of this ad comes from an effective narrative device, rooting for the underdog. Audiences first sympathize with Greg, then root for his success, hoping to rid him of his long bar tab. Michelob is not new to the Super Bowl top 10. They're regulars with a winning brand formula that works for them year on year, both emotionally and in terms of memorability. Okay, number 4, Universal Orlando Resort with Lucky Generals and Little Bro. So, rooting for the underdog, as we said, is the red thread that appears in a Universal Orlando spot where a younger brother, little man, gets tired of being patronized by his older brother. Heading to Universal, the tide suddenly turns as his older brother gets scared to ride the roller coaster, and all of a sudden, he can hold his head high and reverse the roles. It's another example of simplicity over complexity, relatability over relevance, and a true heart warmer from this year's game. Okay, John, are you ready for the top 3? And for the top 3, I will show you the ad along with the System 1 face trace and fluency trace. So you can see second by second how the audience was emotionally reacting to the ad and when they recognized the brand. So what I'll do is I'll share that video with you, and then I'll talk a little bit about what we can learn from them. So first up is going to be Budweiser and American Icons. Take a look.
I'm as free as a bird now, and this bird will never change. Oh, and the bird you cannot change. Lord, I can't change. Won't you fly?
You crying?
Sun's in my eyes.
So Budweiser and BBDO brought us an all-American tale this Super Bowl season. A baby eagle joined by the iconic Budweiser Clydesdale to reinforce the brand's American heritage and anniversary. Clydesdales are what we call a character fluent device, a brand-owned character that reinforces brand identity while building emotional appeal. In simple terms, a horse that is clearly for Budweiser is far more appealing than adding a logo. Budweiser really pulled on the heartstrings with this one, centering the ad around an unlikely friendship, drawing on connection, togetherness, reliability, and no big names or star power. Just pure emotional appeal told using distinctive brand codes. So, what can we learn? Budweiser reveals a simple truth for brands and one that can be continued into everyday advertising. Brand owned beats borrowed every time. So the Super Bowl consistently skews towards borrowed fame and celebrities, and now more prominently, creator cameos. So despite dominating the Super Bowl landscape in our past 7 years of testing, fluent device characters consistently outperform on emotion, commercial impact, and memorability. The takeaways for brands is to stop relying on star power to build your brand and start investing early in ownable brand characters. Celebrities are a shortcut to short-term buzz and attention, but brand characters will give you the creative advantage to cut through on quality, distinctiveness, and ultimately impact. All right, we're ready for number 2.
All right, listen up.
NFL in 72
Today we face our toughest opponent. They may be bigger, stronger, faster, but I'll never surrender. Who am I? I am a champion.
I'm unbreakable, unstoppable, unbelievable.
Weakness will not be in my heart. Defeat will not be in my creed. Who am I? I'm a champion! I'm a monster, a beast.
No one will defy me or deny me.
Who am I? I'm a champion. Belief is my superpower.
It has moved mountains.
It has put a man on the moon.
I believe in myself even when others doubt me.
Who am I? I am a champion.
History will remember me, and the world will know my name. Who am I?
I'm a champion. Who am I? I'm a champion.
Who am I?
I am a champion.
My goodness, I'm still getting chills every time I watch it. So it's no secret that the NFL and 72 and Sunny are longtime partners. And so this is really about compound consistency. They've worked together for years, have a working formula that champions everyday heroes and focuses on community, personal endeavor, and growth. So what can we learn? Again, this is a tried and tested theme that emerged in many of our top 10. Our very own Orlando Woods speaks to these features, otherwise known as right brain features. These are lower cognitive load and are easy for audiences to engage with and understand. Things like characters, storytelling, a clear sense of place, music, dialogue. This year in particular, audiences are resonating with the human-centric narrative over product focus or star power. Okay, and this is it. Number 1 ad on our rankings.
You are my friend.
And it's NFL
You
again.
are special.
72 and Sunny.
You are my
If you are
friend.
special.
You're special to me. You are the only one like you, my friend.
There's only one in this wonderful world. You
Are special.
Again, this is all about humanity, right brain creative features, and authentic characters. Okay, so one of the reasons the NFL has had such consistent success is because it taps into the emotional equity of the game, the excitement from the fans, the relevance and buzz surrounding the sport. Including a sporting celebrity or reference drives emotional appeal significantly. What the NFL have mattered in their Super Bowl formula. It pairs It is the pairing of resonance and relevance, owning this year's big game and setting the standard for years to come. Finally, to tease or not to tease, we'll take a page out of our top 10s book. 7 out of the 10 of the top 10 performers aired their full length ad ahead of Sunday, maximizing reach and impact. Teasers on average do not perform well as full lengths with less time to build connection and memorability. While there's an urge to tease and spark excitement, the most impactful strategy for brands is to lead with the full length. Because when viewers are distracted, partying, and enjoying the Super Bowl with friends, there's no guarantee that your ad will get the full attention it deserves. Extend the runway to mitigate that risk. So one thing that we want to make sure that we do, and something that is a discipline in our competitive edge tool, is really looking at how a category lift. So while we talk a lot about Super Bowl averages, it's important to look at how an ad performed against its category. So before I hand the floor over to you guys for a Q&A, we also want to spotlight the brands that stood out against their relative categories. This is a key, this is a true key to driving commercial impact. As a healthcare brand, chances are you won't land the same emotional impact as a candy brand. So don't measure yourself against them. Instead, look at your direct competitors, the brands you need to stand out against, and measure your impact against that norm. So these are the brands that excelled in their categories, and we see tech, healthcare, and car brands emerge as top contenders. So on our Test Your Ad Competitive Edge database, you can see exactly what's working and where you measure against your respective category. So to stand out on the big game stage, as well as every day, this is where you can start. And if you don't get enough from today's webinar, and you can definitely check us out on our website, on LinkedIn, on the Work podcast, which will be out tomorrow, along with Breaking and Entering, lots of interviews with them and insights flowing through their platform. So you can't miss us. And with that, it's time for our Q&A. We'll see if you guys are tough.
Right. Q&A time. So everybody do drop a comment in the chat or in the Q&A, and Vanessa and I will attempt to answer it. So I was just taking down a few notes, Vanessa, as we were going. Interesting lack of celebrities in the top 10. I only counted maybe 2 of the top 10 having a celebrity. That was quite a big change, isn't it, on previous years?
Yeah, for me, something that rang true and really connected with really the halftime show is this humanity and, neighbor helping neighbor, friend helping friend, horse helping eagle. It really was this, betweenness of two beings that elicited the strongest emotional response.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Brett asked an interesting question, which was, given that this is the one time of the year where people actually think about watching the ads, right? Because obviously people like to skip ads, but in this case, there's a lot of debate about the ads. And he was asking to what extent are people primed to like and take notice of the ads? Because when we look at the results here, they're not scoring above average much. Fluency, if anything, is slightly down, and yet people are paying more attention to the ads. So there's a curious thought there, isn't there, in that what's going on? Is it that people are overwhelmed with the amount of ads? Is it that they're too busy watching the game? I just wonder what your thoughts on that were.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things happening, and we all know that the Super Bowl isn't happening in a vacuum. We talked about how so many brands were releasing their full length ads. There were brands who had celebrities on full on press tours about their ads and the big day. And the big takeaway for me is that if you show up to Super Bowl, if you show up every day like you show up to the holidays and to the Super Bowl, people will lean in. They want to see stories. They want to see really interesting content. So give them more opportunities to do that.
Definitely. Quite a few people in the chat are asking about what our advice to a rookie advertiser would be, because we made quite a big point, haven't we, in our presentation of familiarity, consistency, returning brands do better than rookie brands. Um, the best rookie I've seen was last year's Pfizer ad that came in at number 8. And I think the trick with Pfizer, and also Pfizer compared to the category outperformed it massively. I think for them, the trick was massive preparation. It was rigorous research, rigorous testing, making sure everything was optimized in terms of soundtrack, story, branding. They took quite a big bet. They took a 60-second slot as well, so they made sure that they had the airtime as well. But I think if you're not experienced, you have to put in the practice and do the research. And I mean, obviously, we would say this because we're System 1, but you can test before the big game, ladies and gentlemen. It's possible to get a very accurate prediction before you spend the $8 million to
Yeah.
see where you'll come. So definitely testing in advance will help. But any other thoughts on what would you do
Yeah.
if you were a rookie?
Yeah, it's probably adjacent to testing, but making sure that you really understand who you are and what people love about you. And don't make it too difficult on game day. So if you're first to the game, don't have them questioning or needing to solve a problem. Make it enjoyable, elicit those positive emotions, but keep it easy and keep it simple to really at its core what you're known for and what people love about you.
Hmm. Actually, you reminded me of something. Probably the most common bit of feedback I'm ever giving advertisers is do less. Because everyone tries to put as much as they can into the ads,
Yeah.
and as many scenes as they can, as many messages as they can. And actually, what these winners show is one story well told is much better than many stories badly told. So keep
Yeah.
it simple. And don't forget what we talked about earlier is that 1 in 5 people don't even remember you. So make sure the branding is clear as well.
Mhm.
One question here from Lindsay. I thought it was Lindsay Lohan for a second there, but Lindsay Logan said, "Are we
There's a lot,
really? Do we?
though.
Yeah, I know. This is all the celebrities hang out here,
Yeah, she
after the
wants
big
to
show
learn.
to find out who won the ads, right? Um, are we releasing the full list or just the top 10?
Hmm. We are not releasing publicly the full in a list, but what we do make available. So if you sign up for our competitive edge tool, you can see your ad and everyone else in your category. So that's really important. So the competitive edge tool has some rankings, some top rankings available, but it's got hundreds of thousands of ads in it, and that's your best place to use day in and day out for your, everyday advertising work.
One observation here that uh, in that there's either like lots of crypto ads or there's lots of kind of NFT ads. Now we seem to be in the kind of era of AI. There always
Hmm.
seems to be a technology that is being launched on the Super Bowl,
Hmm.
blockchain and stuff like that,
Hmm.
and they all seem to turn people off. It seems to be the common thing. One
Yeah.
one thing I noticed actually, I guess what were there any good examples of AI and technology this Super Bowl?
Mm. Yeah, I think that there was a few, I think for me with Ring, that was a good example. When you're using, or, Google, Gemini, essentially, if you have a pet that's lost or you're moving a home, that's a good theme. But when you're using AI or using AI or talking about AI or selling AI, making it innately human and telling how really at the end of the day it's still going to be humans using it, and so what does the life of that human look like, and tell a story about how AI is a part of it. Where you run into trouble is ads that are highly negative or problem solution kind of structured. It's a pretty heavy topic, and it's really difficult to overcome in 30 seconds to inherently grab that positive emotion for your brand at the end of that 30 or 60.
Agree. There's good. We've got greetings here from Finland, so we've got a very
Nice.
international audience. And
Love it.
Yuka here was asking how we measure the fluency over the course of the ad. How does that get measured?
Oh, sure. When in our testing, we measure fluency two ways. The overall fluency rating is by the end of the ad. Do you recall the brand correctly? And then we also, in our spike rating, we have a measure for fast fluency, which is how quickly, within the first couple seconds, hopefully, sometimes much longer, did you recognize the brand?
Shout out from Esther here on Gemini. Gemini is a good point, actually. Gemini is the best example of what you just talked about with AI being used as a help
Mhm.
rather than a replacement for humans. So that they beautifully illustrated the power of
Mhm.
AI to help with a family moving home and imagining what the new home would look like with their furniture in. So that's a really good example. Someone asked what the most polarizing commercial that we tested this year was.
Oh gosh, polarizing. Well, I think Duncan. Let's talk about it because you mentioned at the beginning it was one of your favorites.
I love the dunkings. I just
Um,
can't. They just always get in your head, I think. So,
as a 90s kid myself, I really did get all of the references but it was a lot of story to capture. And I really do hope that Duncan extends it to give it a little bit more life because there was a lot packed in to the time increment. And because of that, when comprehension becomes an issue, the positive emotions do not flow.
yeah,
So I think some people who got every single nuance and knew every single actor and every single joke loved it.
yeah.
But not everyone did.
Very, very good. It's one that sometimes you have to be in on the joke, don't you,
Yeah.
to get the value from the ad. And if you're not that familiar with it, you often miss it. Kai's asked an interesting question here, which is how do you follow up a good Super Bowl campaign? So is it just for Super Bowl or is it part of the campaign? And I know one of our stars, Michelob Ultra,
Mm.
they're actually running their campaign in the Winter Olympics, which is happening now this
Yeah.
week. So they're the Super Bowl, they call it their kickoff for the season, and then they
Yeah.
roll through the same creative idea. So for me, I guess it depends on how you brief the campaign, but it's quite clever thinking to think about the whole year and how Super Bowl can become the beginning
Yeah.
of the campaign, not the beginning and the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, truly, the best example has to be Lay's. As someone who looks in our competitive edge database day in and day out, month in and month out, that campaign has been tested in several different iterations, 15s, 30s, 60s, everywhere in between. We've got obviously like season two this year. Every single time you put that campaign through, whether or not Super Bowl time or in the middle of June, every time it gets a high score. And audiences are not getting sick of it. As we say, only marketers get sick of ads.
Well, talking about marketers getting sick of ads, Alan here says he was a little shocked we didn't talk about nostalgia. I mean, nostalgia is not what it used to be, is it, Vanessa? Um,
One of my favorite ads that didn't make it to our top 10 was VW's Drivers Wanted. Having, House of Pain jump around. For me personally, again, 90s kid, I zeroed in on that ad. I love seeing that 90s campaign come back for VW. I love the music. That work last night really made an imprint on my heart.
but on a serious point, nostalgia is very powerful, by the way, Alan. So that would be one of Orlando's right brain features. Things that are set in the past are very powerful. They evoke a lot of emotion, particularly in times of uncertainty. So recessions, COVID, when there are bad events around the world, we seek comfort from the familiar. So nostalgia, 100%. It's partly why I think Clydesdales and Budweiser go well together. And actually, Lay's is a good example. Lay's last 2 years have nailed it with nostalgia, with the kind of,
Mhm.
kid growing up in the picking potatoes in the field. I think that's beautiful.
And Hellman's, I mean, really bringing Neil
Mm,
Diamond. Neil Diamond's music is sung, at college campuses and sporting events across the country, and there that it's an absolute shortcut to positive emotions. The key there is making sure that it doesn't overshadow your brand.
absolutely. Charles wants to put you on the spot here and wants to
Okay.
know if we can say who the worst ad was this year. Are we allowed to reveal the worst ad?
Oh.
There are quite a few actually, because there are about 30 or
Yeah.
so, or 25 or so one stars all competing at the bottom of the table. Um,
Yeah.
I'm fairly sure it was AI of some kind.
That's right. That's right.
Hmm.
So yeah, looking as we said, depending on the calculations, about 20% of ads were in AI of some kind, and most of them are right at the bottom.
So a few examples, Claude,
Coinbase.
Coinbase, Rippling. Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
those kind of ads grouped together were the sort of ones that were down at the bottom.
I mean, Coinbase certainly made uh, captured attention because it was another stunt by them where there's so much clutter and so much noise visually, audibly, and then to go to a blue screen is very much on brand for them. Um, and so it felt right for them, but also it didn't really connect with the viewers emotionally.
Yeah, no, that's very well said actually, because if you're treating Super Bowl as a stunt, your objective may be not necessarily capturing emotion in the moment, but driving shock as
Yeah.
well. So that's also a strategy. Question here from Irina, which is any good B2B examples? Because we did have in that slide earlier, didn't we? The B2B average is only 1.8. We do find that sometimes Salesforce have done quite well. Matthew McConaughey, I think, last year, they did a spot that did quite well. Um, there's often a lot of
Oh,
tax software.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be considered B2B and B2C, but Xfinity was a favorite of mine. And, viewers did respond very well to the ad. So it's Jurassic Park and, being able to see what it would be like if Jurassic Park didn't shut down. Was phenomenal. So I would say that that would be a clear winner in the B2B arena.
Reese has made an observation here. The number one ad featured quite a diverse cast. To what extent did the diverse casting help the score?
Sorry, the screen came up. Which brand again?
So NFL, in their
Oh,
number
okay.
one spot, they had a very diverse cast. I mean, intentionally so, right? To what
Mhm.
extent was the diversity in the ad helping it get to such a good score?
Yeah, I mean, with both of their spots, it really comes down to being real. So they have a very real relationship with the Boys and Girls Club. They have a very real relationship with youth programs across the country. And it isn't about manufacturing those scenes. It's really showing how the NFL with their helmets off strategy and how they're showing up in their communities day in and day out and putting, a camera to that. So I think that's the secret sauce that they've brought to the table.
Question here on NFL spots being emotional, but what are they selling? So I had the honor actually of interviewing Tim Ellis, the CMO of NFL, and Glenn, one of the co-founders of 72 and Sunny. Their objective is getting people in the game, right? And I think this is really powerful. So if you look at the number of people actively playing football, it has grown massively over the last few years. So they're trying to open the game up to as many people as possible and as many communities and also particularly appealing to women as well. That's been a really big drive over the last few years. So I think when that's your objective, it kind of makes complete sense of the diversity as well, and explains why they want to make sure it's as inclusive as it possibly can be.
Mm. It's so good.
So Kareen here was saying we mentioned that the winners aired their ads before the game. How
Mm.
does airing an ad before the game help the performance in terms of the score?
Mm. So the way that I would answer that is that it's not going to whether or not you're launching a teaser or whether or not you're launching the full length ad. Um, the key is making sure that the ad is available beyond just the day because it takes more. We all know about wherein. Wherein is real, wear out is not. And so really it's about sharing that ad as soon as you have it, as early as you have it. And, a lot of, as we said, about storytelling, keeping it simple, or maybe if you have a little bit more of a complex story and you need to have it seen a few times, or there's Easter eggs. I mean, every time you watch the Hellman spot, you're going to see something new, and there's a lot of creativity and care that goes into every nook and cranny of that work. It's really about, it's not about getting a score on the day, it's about winning with customers before, during, and after the game.
Yeah. I think Pepsi was a good example this year because they created the conversation a week before the actual game. So by the time the game happened, we're
Mhm.
already recognizing and looking forward to the spot. Whereas
Mhm.
the risk you take, if the game day is the first time you're airing, you just risk
Mhm.
being crowded out by all the other brands that have already got, familiarity building as well. Kelly's got an interesting question, which I can't answer, but you'll have to answer this one. Any thoughts? You'll realize I'm dodging one here. Any
Yeah, it's
thoughts
okay.
about the cultural need for moments of character and integrity resonating in the US today?
Mhm.
Hmm.
Again, I want to lean back to when we're all looking at our news feeds today, it's just one after the other about the halftime show. And there is a real need and desire for authentic, respectful connection with your peers, with your neighbors. And, we love to see it in the halftime show, but we also love to see it in advertisers bringing that to the table. But it doesn't mean you necessarily need to have a quote unquote purpose campaign. You can bring, that humanity, like Lay's to your product if you want to.
Yeah, focus on what unites rather than what divides,
Yeah.
is always good advice. Question on size of brand. I think this is an interesting one. That typically it's big, well-known household legacy brands tend to be at the top, and smaller brands tend to struggle. Um, yeah, I wonder what good examples of smaller brands. I'm thinking, I know Poppy, for example,
Mm,
did quite well last year when they had their, or was it 2 years ago, they had their first Super Bowl spot. They did a
mm,
quite a decent job. And they
mhm,
kind of integrated it with everything else they were doing, and they used some of the creators they've been working with for a number of years. So it all kind of built up. And in fact, it wasn't the Poppy ad was just one of their ads. It wasn't a special Super Bowl spots. They were again building in
mhm,
consistency. So using their
mhm.
advantage of creators, consistency with what they're known for, was what helped them. I was just wondering, any other advice to a smaller brand?
Oh gosh. Um, well, I would say that, a lot of the same things that we preach day in and day out is good for a small brand, a challenger brand, and actually I would argue that it's more important than ever. So, really you just need to make sure you understand your distinctive assets. So, how can you make sure that you understand what those visual cues, those scenarios, a sense of place that someone's going to recognize. Like you have to really understand how you're going to achieve fluency in that moment. And you can't rely on, a spectacle, if you will, to carry you. You're really going to have to understand how someone's going to make sure that it's for you. So I think that would be like the first place that if you're a small brand and you happen to have, up to $10 million for a Super Bowl spot, making sure that you understand how people are going to recognize it to you from how they know
Yeah.
you, whether or not you're a direct to consumer brand or what have you.
One good example, actually, of a small brand that I've just thought of last year was Liquid Death giving away the fighter jet, which I
Mm,
thought was absolutely genius. So, if you have a small budget, you have to be more creative and earn the right to be talked about by doing something that's going to get everyone talking about you as well as watching you. So, that's a good
mhm.
example. Interesting question here for the techie people in our team. Is there a correlation between when in the game you air your ad and the result? So does the placement of the media effectively influence your score? I think that depends on who's winning, whether it's your team winning or the other team winning. It might be more that.
Yeah, we do test ads in real time during the game, which is why our team is up all night. So it's real people, emotionally reacting to the work in our testing system during the game. So, I don't have a great answer to that question. But again, it's really today or yesterday is an indicator of things that you can learn from brands that have figured out and cracked the nut how to be recognized and how to elicit an emotional response. And the key for everybody, I think, on the line now is how do you take those tips and tricks and how do you bring it into your own world?
One thing I did looking at bumper advertising, so sponsored breaks just before and
Mhm.
after, is that the content you're watching, the emotion you feel at the end of a drama, if you're sponsoring a drama, that seeps into your ad as well. So if you've got
Mhm.
like a particularly sad
Mhm.
moment, then you tend to feel sadder as you're watching the ad, or a happy moment. So my hypothesis being, if your team have just scored, you might
Yeah.
just rate the ad slightly better, or if they
Yeah.
just lost, then the other thing may be true. Jim said he joined late. Where can he get the methodology from? System1group.com website. Go there.
Mhm.
Make sure group because there are two System ones, and make
Mhm.
sure you get the right one. Um, Oh, controversial question coming up here. Distinctive assets. Could Pepsi's use of the polar bear create strong associations with Coca-Cola? Does that reduce the campaign's effectiveness? I love that question because everybody's been debating it on LinkedIn in the last week, including Ehrenberg Bass themselves, who are, as everyone knows, the experts in the room when it comes to mental availability and the use of distinctive assets. They strongly advise against that featuring your competitor in your advertising.
Mhm.
I have a slightly different view that occasionally rules can be broken. Pepsi is a good example of where you can break it because in our testing, what we found is that at the end of watching the ad, more people associated Pepsi than polar bears. And Pepsi won both brand associations and also branding. So most people knew it was a Pepsi ad. I
Mhm.
think it was in the 90s, if I remember rightly. It was, I might be miscorrecting that. But anyway, they did a very, very good job. And also, I think Pepsi's distinctive asset, or their fluent device, as we would call it, is the taste challenge. So the very idea of comparing with Coke is an idea they've owned for 50 years. So I give them a big tick. But anyway,
Yeah, I mean
but
that and the concert. I know that everyone is kind of
oh
joking about the
yeah,
Coldplay
yeah.
reference, but Pepsi and music are so closely woven together in their entire history. So bringing in the concert wasn't a coincidence. It was a strategic decision to get that fluency.
That was very funny. That was my favorite bit of the ad. Lovely anonymous comment here about
Uh-oh.
can we categorize these ads by Orlando's left and right brain features?
Mm,
Answer is yes. Our Test Your Ad Pro report, which is the one that does exactly that, which goes into why the ad worked or why the ad didn't work. One of the things it does in the Pro report is it picks up the Orlando's left and right features. It for me, it's one of the best things in advertising, the best ways of explaining why advertising works through the
mhm,
left and right hemispheres. Super helpful. But the answer is yes. We haven't done it for Super Bowl because of the time we had. We're just getting the top line results. But if you want it, yes, you
mhm,
can have it for everything. Um, what testing is best? Animatics, AI, or illustrations? The answer to that is whatever's most similar to the end output is the answer. But everything can be tested from right at the beginning of the process to the end. The earlier you test, the bigger the impact of the testing because it gives you an opportunity to optimize as well. Crystal asks, did 60 seconds perform better than 30 seconds? Interesting question. Vanessa, do we have
mhm.
that cut by 60 versus 30?
Yeah, it depended on the advertiser. So there were some advertisers who pre-released 60s ahead of time, and we tested them, and they scored higher than the 30-second that aired during the game, but also vice versa. There were some brands who launched 60s, 90s, 2-minute films, and the 30-second in-game performed higher. So
There
not
you
one
go.
answer to that one, but we did look at that. And if you're interested in a brand, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to chit chat about ads and how they did.
We did do a meta-analysis of the whole database on ad length, and it tells you
Mhm.
something that you probably already knew, which is 30 seconds is actually the
Yeah.
optimum amount of time to tell a story and not bore people, get your message across. So the optimum is between 20 and 40, below 20 drops, above 40 also drops.
Yeah, I'm
So
glad that you.
yeah, that's obviously a shorthand, of course, and you can make a 60 or a 90 work better than a 30 if you've got more to
Mhm.
say as well. Is there an analysis of in-house spots? Well,
Mhm.
Amazon did an in-house spot, didn't they?
Mhm.
Joe and the amazing team at Amazon did do a great job. They do a lot in-house actually. So there are a few. Liquid Death do that. Their ad was in-house as well. There's a handful, I think, that are done in-house.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
it's certainly something that we can look at and report on a little bit later. So, as we were testing everything in the last 24 hours, we were tracking, we had tracked ahead of time all the
yeah.
brands that pre-released, but we also tracked every single ad, who the advertiser was, what agency it was, what time increment it was, and what that score was. So, and then also did do some spreadsheet coding on things that we noticed in each of the ads. So there's definitely a lot of nuance there, and definitely encourage. We'd love to speak with you after today.
Right, we're getting to the final 2 minutes, so I have to talk really quickly. Apologies, everyone. I love this question. What are the top five Super Bowl ads of all time? I'm gonna take a slight guess. I've been writing this down, so little fact check can go on while I say this. Microsoft Game Controller from about 7 years ago, 5.9. Huggies from 2022, 5.8. NFL this year, 5.9. Um, then there was I've just forgotten one. There was another one. They got a 5.9 star.
Disney,
Um, hmm?
Disney,
Disney got 5.3 in 2023. So who am I forgetting? I'm definitely forgetting
Lay's,
somebody. Lay's.
Lay's,
Thank
Lay's
you.
Little Farmer.
Lay's last year, 5.9.
Mhm.
So they would be the top five. Microsoft, Lay's, Huggies, NFL, and maybe Disney, he says. I think I'm wrong, Disney. I don't think Disney got a 5.9, but they
And
have
maybe
5.6.
Groundhog Day.
Hmm?
Jeep Groundhog Day
Yeah,
is
Groundhog Day is going to be up there. That's going to be up there
mhm.
as well. I love this question. This is where I get to be English.
Okay.
Okay, UK Christmas ads versus the Super Bowl. I'm a massive Super Bowl fan, but I have to hand it to the Brits on this one. Christmas is now I have to say there's a caveat here. Obviously, English creative agencies, British creative agencies are amazing, but Christmas is very emotional, nostalgic. So actually, Christmas as a season evokes a lot of emotion. And in fact, Vanessa, I think I'm right in saying as well, holiday season ads in the US also do particularly well on average, don't they? So
They are increasing year on year. Yeah, you're gonna have to contend with US Christmas going up
it's
here.
coming. It's coming, isn't it?
It's getting close.
Well, look, we still have about 50 questions left. In fact, over
Oh my,
50 questions left. So I have to thank everybody, and I have to apologize for any question that we didn't get to answer. I tried to bundle some together as we went through. So I'm hoping between us we covered most of the questions that came through. But thank you so much, everybody, for your engagement. It is really cool. I must say a massive thank you to Vanessa and Vanessa's marketing team. They were up very late last night putting this together, and they've been working tirelessly to get the results to you. So I hope you enjoy it. Get a copy of the presentation, and hopefully we'll see some of you on Super Bowl next year.
and thanks for joining me, John.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.